Hello everyone! Welcome back to my Dragon Quest VI 100% walkthrough. Joining me today is Skyzo. How you doing, my man?
I'm doing well. Hello, Yishu.
So, this guy... We're gonna be fighting him as a boss fight, and he's not super bad. If we wanted to, we could actually do the exact same thing we did with Duran, where we just had Carver tank everything. But this guy is easy and quick enough that we're gonna do a slightly riskier strat instead. Now that dark fog he did, it nullifies your magic and keeps you from casting spells, but we're not using any magic anyway, so we just use the Sword of Ramirez again and double our attack. Also, did you see how much damage he did with that desperate attack?
Yeah?
He has a 1 in 3 chance of using that. And as you can see, he can just one-shot Rex anytime he wants to, which is why he's in the 4th slot. Characters in the 4th slot only have a 10% chance of being targeted. Now, since we got the oomphs on all of our characters, we're putting Rex in the front and we're gonna have him defend every turn so that damage is halved. He'll be kind of our meat shield that way. And from there, we're just going to beat him into the ground.
So, his gimmick is that he has just a very strong move that can pretty much one-shot anybody he wants. Is that his gimmick?
He can one-shot Rex. The others have enough HP to where they just barely survive. Actually, especially Lizzie. Like, she has over 300 HP.
Well, isn't this one of the strongest attacks in the game? Like, the one that he's doing?
It is.
Okay, that's pretty impressive.
So, like, if you wanted to be, like, completely safe, and you didn't want to risk anyone dying, and I'm comfortable with the risk, because at this point, I have free Yggdrasil leaves on Lizzie, so I can revive people now, if needed. But if you wanted to be totally safe, you do like you did with Duran. You'd have Millie in your party instead of Lizzie, have her with the glass slippers on so that she always goes last. You'd give her the Staff of Ghent, and you'd have Terry with the demon armor to reduce his agility to 0. And you'd have Millie Terry using the Sage of Stone and Staff of Ghent each turn. And between that and the Mystic Armor regen, Carver would heal it off while Rex just beat the boss into the ground. That takes a while though, so that's why we didn't do it. You could do that.
Okay, and is this another boss fight?
No. Actually, I was incorrect, like, way back when. Part 8 was not the last time we saw this quasi-omnipotent figure. It's helping. These giants are actually on our side. They're against Mortimer. They just didn't know we were heroes up till now, so they were kind of playing the part of bad guy.
Huh, okay.
Also, AKBAR.
Like, where's that? Where did you see that?
AKBAR is the guy that runs the place. They mentioned him briefly.
Oh.
In the remakes, he was renamed BLACKMAR, which is one of my favorite changes.
Okay.
Now, as you can see, we had Carver go in by himself, and we removed all of his equipment to drop his agility to his defense to near 0. That's because there's sort of this mini boss fight coming up, and that mini boss fight we can win, but it's immediately followed up by a fight that we can't win, as part of a one of those scripted boss fights that you're supposed to lose. So what we're doing is we're going ahead and skipping the middleman and just getting ourselves set up to where we just lose to the forced boss fight as soon as possible.
Okay, well, like, this is not the first time that this game throws out a boss fight that you can't win. There was another fight like that in the last episode, I think. Like, maybe before that one time, but yeah, I wonder what happens if you win somehow, maybe by cheating or hacking.
By the way, do you see this guy?
Yeah.
Do you remember how I mentioned in part 4 or part 6 about that guy that died because of our, or seemed to have died because of our disguising ourselves at Somnia Castle?
Yeah, what about him?
Well, that's the guy. Or at least his dream world self. And the fact that his dream world self is alive implies that there's a good possibility that his real world self is alive as well. So that's sort of your hint that he's alive after all.
Okay, from what I understand, we're in the skies, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Just making sure, because, yeah, why would they be friendly? Okay.
Yeah, when those centaurs threw us in prison, they gave us some guards' garb, or soldiers' uniforms, so we could walk around undetected. After we used our key to free ourselves from prison.
Well, it's more of a nitpicking thing, but it would make more sense if the helmet actually covered the whole face, because then they would be able to tell.
To be fair, some people really are rather unobservant.
Yeah, that's true. If you're a guard for, like, a long time, you're just not paying attention, I guess. But then you're not a very good guard, so...
Yeah.
So what's going on here?
These guys are planning an uprising. They're crafting some specially brewed alcohol. Normally, the soldiers steal whatever alcohol they make as part of their attempts to just make their lives as miserable as possible. But the thing is, BLACKMAR is like super strong. Like, he's so strong that any uprising they planned is just doomed to fail. Until we came along. We actually have the power to put BLACKMAR in his place. So they're finally gonna go ahead and go through with their plan because of that, and because there's this nun. This nun gives them hope. They've noticed that, so BLACKMAR is gonna take this nun, infect her with an evil spirit, and turn her into his wife. And they don't want that to happen.
That is surprisingly fucked up, actually.
It is. Well, these are dread fiends.
You're right.
And fortunately, unlike our escapade, and fortunately, unlike Millie's backstory, we're actually gonna get closure on this.
Huh? Actually, I didn't even notice there was a guillotine. That's... okay.
Yep. This is the Gallows Moor. This is where people go when the Dread Fiend really just wants to make them suffer.
Wait, but if there's a guillotine, then what happens if they're decapitated, like somebody is? Did they just die again?
Well, none of these guys are dead. They were just yoinked from the real world or the dream world to here. Like, the game doesn't really explain what the thought process behind this is, but Mortimer basically just zaps people randomly from this place to his place.
So then this is not a hell equivalent then, because if you die, you don't come here, right?
Yeah, it's not hell. Well, it's the demon world, but there's not really like a hell.
So what happens when a character dies?
You know, I'm not really sure. I don't think they go into the afterlife in this game.
Huh. Maybe on later games.
I think they do. Anyways, someone's about to be executed. We're supposed to try and stop it, but instead we're just going to get our butts kicked. There we go. No armor. We're using double up so that we take double damage. And it's over nice and fast.
Okay, how did you survive that?
They're gonna execute you tomorrow.
Huh? Okay.
So, what the game expects you to do during that fight, that's actually a winnable fight. So you and your entire party would kick those soldiers' butts, and then 2 of BLACKMAR'S lieutenants would come. I think there's a wizard called Dogmas, and a knight called Zazagel, or some weird name like that. And for the most part, you'd normally be able to beat him. It's just that the wizard Dogmas has this crazy technique where he just paralyzes your entire party in one turn. And it can't be resisted. Presumably it's something we would have seen coming in the future, but as far as this scripted fight goes, you just have no chance of dodging it and you lose outright. Then all of this would happen.
Interesting. And it's more of a small detail, but like, do you see those tiles to the right? Like, what is that even?
Those are barrier floors. You step on them and they hurt you.
The texture on that is pretty cool, actually. I like it.
In any case, what they're doing now is they put their plan into action. The guards and soldiers stole their alcohol, but they spiked their alcohol so that it would put them to sleep. And now they're doing their uprising, and they saw our strength, so they're counting on us to beat up BLACKMAR. We gotta go fast, too, because BLACKMAR is starting the wedding ceremony right now.
Okay, that's... I wonder how this fight will go.
Is there anything else to cover? Actually, there's another plot detail, but we'll cover that after we beat up BLACKMAR. For now, we're gonna talk to this guy and get 4 free Seeds of Strength. 5 if you're playing the remakes.
And what do those items do?
They increase your strength stat by 1 to 3 points.
So, like, how much damage and percentage does that increase? Like 25%?
Well, you get an extra point of damage for every 2 points of strength you have under normal circumstances. And so on average, we would get 4 more points of damage from those Seeds of Strength. You multiply that by Focus Strength, and that's a minimum of 8 more damage. You multiply that by Knuckle Sandwich, and that's 16 more points of damage. You multiply that by Oomph, and that's 32 more points of damage. So it all kinda adds up.
Okay, yeah, I can see why they didn't go overboard with the damage on that, because it would just get out of control.
Also, another detail we fast-forwarded through, but there was a sleeping guard just outside the throne room. That was Zozagal, the lieutenant, or whatever his name is. He was the guy that came with Dogmas, but he's on his own now. We don't fight Dogmas again. So if you talk to him, he would actually wake up and you'd fight him. But enough of that. Let's fight these guys. Now, this can be a fairly tricky encounter. BLACKMAR himself does a lot of AoE attacks. He follows that up with a lot of melee attacks. And then he follows that up with Kasap to lower your defense. Or, if you killed 2 of his minions, the Guardians, he'll use Kazing on them. And that has a 100% chance of restoring them to 100% HP. Just the same as if you'd used an Yggdrasil leaf. As for the Guardians, they themselves have decent melee attacks. But more importantly, they can summon these things called Curers, which, among other things, they heal, and they can also stop spell us. And we do not want them to use stop spell, because that is really bad if they do. So, what we do is we kill the Guardians right away with our strongest attacks. And while we're doing so, we try to land Stop Spell or Fizzle on BLACKMAR. He's 50% resistant to it, but if we get lucky, we seal away his magic. Like, see, we just did it there? At that point, he's just a guy that throws a lot of damage. But we have the Sage's Stone, and we have the Staff of Ghent. So we can heal off his damage, and from there, we try to lower his defense with Sap, so we can do a lot of damage back to him, and from there, it's just a drunken slap fight, where we just hit each other over and over again, and we win.
Well, that wasn't as difficult as I thought it would be.
That's because I knew what his critical weakness was. Like this happened in my first playthrough, where if you just walk into the boss fight without any awareness, you'll take out the minions, but then he'll revive the minions, and then they'll summon some Curers, and it just turns into this thing where you're not making any real progress. He's progressively grinding you down with really good damage and Kasaps, and I won, but it was a really scary fight on my first attempt.
So, why did he not revive his minions? Is that because you cast a spell on him?
Yeah, the stop spell. He revives his minions via Kazing. But we prevented him from using any more spells.
Okay, so you essentially just have a coin flip on whether he takes it or not.
Precisely.
Okay, well, he's dead.
Yeah, and that is another one of those cases where I made the fight look a lot easier than it actually was, just because I knew of that weakness.
I imagine that if you get unlucky, he could, wear you down, I guess, but it would have to be, extremely poor luck.
That, too. And the other thing is, Fizzle isn't something you really use against any of the other bosses. In fact, it's not something you use a lot in general, because status spells are always weird in RPGs, where they can never be too effective against boss fights, otherwise you trivialize them. But at the same time, you never use them during random encounters either, because it's faster to just clear them out, right?
That's true. Yeah, usually you don't... Well, usually you would only use them for, more significant encounters. So, maybe a trainer battle, you would want to use them because it's a longer fight. but otherwise they go unused.
And this game, I think, actually does a pretty good job of that, where, like, different bosses have different weaknesses, and even when you land it on them, they don't usually get just hard countered completely. They're just not as dangerous as they would have been otherwise.
That's true, and something that I like about this game is that it just seems to have like just better encounters, really, like against mini bosses and so on. It just has a lot more content, I feel.
It's one of the reasons I really like it too.
Okay, so what's going on here?
So the other thing that this prison was made for was there are these two sages that are super duper strong when they are together. They basically have Wonder Twin powers. So what the Dread Fiend wanted to do was separate them. And there are two different prisons, one for this brother and one for the other brother. And they're going to try to convert them to evil as well. Like one of the other brothers, he is, at this moment, being tortured by visions of his younger brother dying over and over again. And they're gonna keep haunting him with those visions until he agrees to submit and serve monster kind.
So that would be more or less a pact, right?
Yeah. We're gonna prevent that from happening by breaking their hold on that other brother in the prison.
Right, so I imagine that the two sages are very powerful then, so they want to make them their assets.
Exactly.
Okay.
Also, this guy has been in the cellars for a really long time, so he just collapsed right there. He needs his rest.
So I take it that he was being tortured as well?
You know, the game doesn't really go into that. I would imagine so, but not like the other brother.
Well, it's impressive that he just didn't surrender.
Indeed. And now, the very first time we've seen Mortimer do something since Sorceria. Everyone's celebrating their victory, everyone's all happy, but Mortimer is gonna crash the party.
Oh damn, look at that.
Yep. Check out what he's gonna do now.
I'm a big fan of those effects.
So am I. It's very creepy.
Yeah, it is. So he just transformed everyone.
Yep. Either turned them to statues or morphed them into animals. And dead silence. There is no music at all.
It's really funny that he just turned that one person into a cat.
Indeed. And now our adventure continues next time. Have a nice day and God bless everyone.
Okay, well, I'll see you next time, YouTube.